Hi there, my name's Alex Stanier, my company's IT for Business. This video is about managing, particularly about printers, but it would be any complicated piece of kit that you have in your production facility. So let's crack on. What we're going to be talking about is risk to your business because of the complexity of the equipment and about how the solution is put together, which is doing that function. Again, we're talking about printers this time. So ultimately it's about management and balancing the risk of the complexity against the cost. So let's crack on. So there's your computer in your office, typical office computer. When you print directly from your computer straight to the printer in an office. And that's because your computer can handle a certain level of complication in the print itself. If you're just doing A4, for example, black and white A4 or color A4, it's not a big print job. It's not that difficult. Actually, the people who make printers sometimes make the software that manages that process of printing overly complicated. It would be easier if they stuck to what Apple and Microsoft say they should. Anyway, let's see what it's like when you print to a really complicated printer, like a massive flatbed, huge cutting device, or something that's like a printer but it's doing something massive. Well, what happens there is the solution is provided by a supplier, and they provide the printer or the plotter or whatever it is, and they'll provide a computer that's absolutely dedicated and set up to control that device. And you don't realize it, but they are also supplying a special piece of software called a software driver, which sits on the computer, and it knows how to make the plotter or printer, whatever it is, do whatever it needs to do. Writing drivers is very complicated, and the trouble is that the driver is tied to two things. It's tied to the machine that it's controlling, but it's also tied to the operating system, the software on the computer. So there'll come a point where the people who make the device, they stop producing upgrades for the driver. What typically happens is they produce this brand new bit of a kit, they write the software driver, there are bugs, there are faults, there are problems, so they release another version. Eventually they don't want to do it anymore because they've moved on to some new bit of kit that they want to sell. They don't want to upgrade the old stuff, so they don't. They just leave it. We'll come back to that. Because they've done a whole solution, it's kind of all their responsibility. Now, what about a piece of kit where you've got it like a large format printer or plotter, it sort of looks like on here, but it's a large format printer. And let's say it's from Hewlett Packard, and they provide that software driver, but you're supposed to load the software driver originally on your laptop if you want to, or you might put a dedicated computer of your own to control that piece of kit. And that's, those controllers are useful because, or let's call it a print server, they might remember all the previous jobs, which means you can walk up to it, say print the last job again, without needing to trouble the person who actually created the job in the first place, who was using a laptop at home or wherever it was. So they have a specific role, and again, the software driver really matters. So in this case, there is no overall responsible supplier for the computer and the software driver and the plotter. There isn't one, but you're effectively replicating what you had from the bigger solution, where there was a more expensive relationship, where there's better support and all the rest of it. It's still the same complexity. You've got a computer, you've got a software driver, you've got a device, printer, plotter, whatever it is. And you might have multiple of these. You might have 5 or 6 or 7, and that it feels expensive because you're looking at a separate computer for each one. Now, those computers don't have to be that powerful, but they do have to be managed and protected. So you might say, wow, that's terrible. Can't we just get rid of those computers and just centralize them into one? Now, here's the problem. All those different plotters, they're different ages. And the software driver for each one will be of a different age. And there comes a point where the latest version of Windows or Mac OS or whatever it is that's running on it won't work with the software driver. Now, there's nothing wrong with the hardware. The hardware's still fine. You can still plot or print or scan or whatever it is you want to do. You can make it fine, but you can't control it on a brand new computer. So now you're in a situation where if you want your solution to keep working, you've got to keep that computer, and you may have to keep that computer on an old version of the software, the Windows or Mac or whatever, in order to work with the driver, in order to control the piece of equipment. So what you've created on your own is effectively what's the same as in the pink box, which is the complete solution from a provider. Now you could then say, well, I'm going to make it work. I'm just going to have one computer controlling all my different separate plotters. And now you've got a difficult juggling act, because you've got to make all those software drivers work on one computer, given that they're all of different ages and different vintages and so on and so on. That puts a lot of dependency on that one computer in the middle. If it goes wrong, you can't do anything. But more than that, the effort put in to make that computer work with all those different bits of software drivers, that's very expensive, because that's a lot of time. Which means we probably go back to this situation, which is the best situation, where you see your home-built solutions. So a bit like the pink one, where you pay for the entire thing from someone else. You treat it like that yourself. You treat each of those computers as part of the solution for using that piece of equipment, which means you do have to potentially keep those computers running certain versions of software, Windows, Mac OS, whatever, in order for the software driver to work. And that means that potentially you'll have to protect them in different ways. So for example, if you've got a business where you've got a load of staff working in an office, they are kind of high risk, lots of people doing things, going on the internet all the time, clicking things, blah, blah, blah. They should really be in a separate IT network to your production setup, where your production computers are sitting with bits of equipment attached. And those are sitting in a very safe zone, which can't directly speak to the people in the, can see the people in the office computers. So although they are computers, you have to think of them a bit differently. They are part of solutions, whether you've assembled the solution or whether suppliers provided you with a solution. And it's a bit more expensive because you're using separate computers, but it's much less complicated. And so there's less risk to your business that if something fails, you won't affect too much and you'll be able to fix it again. So thanks for watching. Sorry it rambled a bit, but hopefully that helps you understand complexity of printing technical solutions. Thank you.